And now to your hurricane talk for today, which is today's July 27th, 2011. You can see right now we have a risk of severe thunderstorms today over portions of, we're talking about portions of the Central Plains today as your main risk today. We're talking about areas from pretty much around western parts of South Dakota, extreme southwestern South Dakota, portions of northwestern parts of Kansas, around the Chicago area, and portions of Iowa. But the threat today will mainly be flooding with periods of potentially damaging wind. It does not look like a significant threat of severe weather, but the threat is there for potentially some damaging winds to occur with the storm that develops. Obviously, the main talk today has been the tropics, which you're looking at the National Hurricane Center website. We're looking at now Invest 90L, which now has an 80% chance of becoming a tropical cyclone during the next 48 hours. And the way it's looking on satellite, this likely will become a tropical depression later on this morning or into the early afternoon hours, and likely will become a tropical storm before the day is over with. Here's a look at the Eastern Pacific. Obviously, you can see it's looking pretty good right now. There's no tropical cyclones that are being monitored by the National Hurricane Center, and no developments expected during the next 48 hours. Let's see if I can pull this up. Here's a look at the latest precipitable water imagery. Let me see if I can scroll this down for you. The latest look at the precipitable water imagery continues to show that we have a good amount of moisture in portions of the Caribbean and to the eastern Atlantic. You can see we're still dealing with that dry air from obviously the Sahara, the desert. But you can see what we're really watching is where Invest 90L is located right around this region. As you see by the motion, sorry if the computer's going a little slow today, it's showing a little bit of a cyclonic spin during the last animation as it exits off the Isle of Youth, the Cuban coast. There is a little bit of a cyclonic spin with it, so the storm is starting to exhibit some rotation with it. So this is beginning to get better organized. The reason the environmental conditions are looking really favorable is because we had an upper level low which was centered in the Bay of Campeche a few days ago, but it's obviously moved into the Mexico around Tampico. Let's see, they just updated. The upper level low moved around the Tampico area, and as that moved in, it helped give the storm a little bit more breathing room, a little bit more room for it to try and organize, and it's obviously beginning to show that signs right now. It's obviously in an area where there's not a lot of shear at, and as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, environmental conditions are expected to remain pretty conducive and favorable, that this system could begin to strengthen and potentially become something that bears watching for portions of the Texas coastline or extreme northern Mexico. Let's look at this next animation. Here's a look at the spaghetti plots right now. This is the latest ones as of the 12 UTC run. The 12 UTC run is showing the models are in pretty good agreement of a system making landfall somewhere around the south central Texas coastline. Right now, the areas in the line of fire looks to be around the Galveston, Houston area and points south, right around where the storm potentially, if it develops, can make landfall. Right around Corpus Christi is where the models are pretty much centering on right now for an area of a direct landfall, but we still can't rule out the opportunity that the system may make a landfall around Brownsville or even portions of extreme northern Mexico. Those chances are decreasing significantly. This is looking more likely that this will probably make landfall somewhere right around central Texas, probably around Friday morning. And the good news is some of this moisture, as you can see by the outliers, continue to fan off to the northwest. So this actually may bring some rainfall to some areas that actually desperately need it. I'm hoping it moves farther enough to the north, the south, that we get some moisture to wrap around in portions of northern Texas and Oklahoma, which are one of the worst drought areas in America right now. They actually could use some rain pretty badly, and we're going to see if wherever the track goes, it depends on where the track goes, of whether this will bring some rainfall to Texas or not, which is several inches behind for the year, an exceptional drought, and obviously this rainfall will help significantly. We're talking about some areas can get several inches of rainfall during the next several days with this. The tornado threat is obviously there. We're going to watch that, obviously. Every time we have a landfalling tropical system, we get that little low-level rotation. So we're also going to watch the potential for a nice tornado to develop around this area. Obviously, the Storm Prediction Center will be watching that. Here's a look at the intensity forecast. This is the latest one as well. They're all pretty much in agreement of making this a tropical storm. So there's a good possibility we're going to have a tropical storm with it. If it becomes a tropical storm, Which it likely will. This will likely become Tropical Storm Dawn, the fourth one of the Atlantic hurricane season. You can see the good amount of the models carries up to around 50 to 60 knots, which makes this a strong tropical storm. So we're talking about potentially a strong tropical storm to maybe even a weak Category 1 hurricane. Some sources may be showing that we may, in fact, may having our first landfalling hurricane of the 2011 hurricane season. That's still a couple of days out. Obviously, we're still going to have to continue to watch that. But there is potential that we could potentially be seeing our first landfalling hurricane somewhere around the south central Texas coastline. But if it becomes a hurricane or a weak, strong tropical storm, the effects are still going to be the same. Doesn't really matter. Just going to have a different term, obviously. But main threat with this storm will be very heavy rainfall and gusty winds. So once again, we'll continue to hope that we get some good soaking rainfall in portions of the Texas coastline with this system. Here's a look at the loop of the Canadian model. As you can see, the models have not been doing that well with this system at all. They have not really had a good definition of low pressure of developing at all. I put the GFS and the Canadian, I've took a look at all those models. None of them are really pinpointing a direct area of low pressure with it, obviously because it's such a small system. But the interesting thing is the Canadian and the GFS are starting to pinpoint potentially some kind of development off the Eastern Pacific during the next several days, and that may ride up the coast and may bring some rainfall to portions of Mexico, similar to their last storm they just had. But look at the Canadian; it's not showing anything that looks promising during the next several days, except maybe one little wave right there, the last frames right there coming off the coast, moving toward Puerto Rico. You can barely see it in the last frames, but I'm keeping an eye on that. That could be a trend that we're going to watch. That's associated with the wave that's coming off the coast right now. But the Canadian model is pretty aggressive with it, so nothing to really write home about right now. It's a pretty aggressive model, so not really going to trust it right now. Here's a look at the tropical cyclone formation possibilities. You can see there actually is a couple of areas in the Atlantic that are actually being considered for possible development areas. There's about 4 of them, one in the Gulf of Mexico, the southeast coastline, then there's 2 in the broad eastern Atlantic. These 2 in the eastern Atlantic obviously associated with a pretty broad area of low pressure, and obviously the one we're watching right here is obviously associated with the potential for a tropical storm. I'm already going to say Tropical Storm Dawn, which could form from our next tropical system. This is probably associated with a frontal boundary, but nothing really to write home about. And then these 2 are tropical waves that are coming off the coast. These obviously bear watching. Some models want to try and develop one of these, especially this one with the Canadian model wants to develop this one, but nothing to really nothing significant right now to show. But like I said, we're just going to continue to watch that one. But there also is potential for some development in portions of the Eastern Pacific, which is actually highlighting a pretty good opportunity, a little bit of a moderate chance by the probability chances. But once again, the National Hurricane Center is not watching it right now. That could change over the next several days as it drifts off to the northwest. But looking at that one, I've looked at some of the models. Doesn't show that making a direct landfall. Shows us hugging up against the Mexican coastline. So in conclusion, today's video, you can see once again we're dealing with, we're going to continue to watch Invest 90L. We're also going to continue to watch this tropical wave, which is moving into the Lesser Antilles, and there's a third one coming off the coast of Africa, which is moving off to the west. We have a couple of looks like a frontal boundary producing some showers and thunderstorms over portions of the Gulf Coast. No development is expected wise, so right now speaking, the only system we're watching in the entire tropics right now is Invest 90L, which is crossing the western Caribbean, western parts of Cuba, the Isle of Youth, bringing some squallier weather to portions of Cuba, the Yucatan Peninsula. And once again, this likely will become our next tropical depression pretty much at any time, as the hurricane hunters are scheduled to investigate this later on today. And we will see if we have a closed low or not. And once again, when we get that information, we'll be sure to let you know on the Hurricane Talk page. But once again, safely speaking, we're just watching that one. And also speaking in the long term, none of the models are showing anything significant developing in the Atlantic during the next several days, except, like I said, the Canadian model, which potentially wants to develop that area of low pressure or farther off to the east around the African coastline. And also the GFS Canadian want to develop this broad area of low pressure, which is trying to develop in portions of the Eastern Pacific. But for right now, that's pretty much it right now. We'll continue to watch Invest 90L, and obviously it will be declared Tropical Depression 4 later on today, and likely will become Tropical Storm Dawn by later on tonight. So that's it for everyone. That's it right now. Take care, everyone.